Right, measuring flour. Two things to remember. You're going to spoon the flour into the dry measuring cup, and you're going to level it with a straight edge spatula. No scooping and no packing or tapping. And those are the rules. This is what makes flour different than measuring other dry ingredients. So you're going to spoon it into a dry measuring cup and then level it. Okay, two things to remember. No scooping, no packing. Now, if your recipe calls for 1 cup of flour sifted, you're going to measure first and then sift. If your recipe calls for 1 cup of sifted flour, you're going to sift first and then measure. So if the sift comes before the flour, sift first. If the word sift comes after the flour, measure first. The first step is that we're going to spoon our flour into the measuring cup. Now you can use a spoon like this, or you can even use another measuring cup like this. What you cannot do is you cannot scoop it like this, because that packs it into the measuring cup, okay? So we can use this as our spoon and spoon it in lightly. The idea is that we do not want the flour packed into the cup, okay? So step 2 is simple. Just like in our other dry ingredients, we're going to use our straight edge spatula and we're going to level off the top so we have a perfect measurement. Now, the other very important thing to remember is not to tap it and not to pack it. We tend to want to take it and kind of shake it, or maybe even tap it a little bit. And if you do that, that's going to allow the flour to settle in and to pack in. Let me show you what happens. If I take this 1 cup of flour, we've measured exactly 1 cup. And I'm moving everything else out of the way so you can see what happens on the wax paper. But if I tap it, let's just say I take it and I go, okay, I'm going to tap that down. Maybe I'm going to, use this a little bit. Let me use it over on this side. Okay, do you see what's happening to the flour? It's settling into the cup. I didn't spill it on the table or on the wax paper, but it has settled into the measuring cup. If I were to put more flour in and say, okay, this is a cup with more flour in it, then I would have too much. And if I have too much flour, whatever I'm baking, my cookies or my cake, is going to be dry. And nobody wants to have dry cake. We want it to be nice and moist. So we've got to measure it exactly the way we say. So we're going to, once again, we're going to spoon it in, and we could use our a smaller dry measuring cup as our spoon, but we're going to spoon it in, and then we're going to very carefully, no packing, no tapping, we're going to level off the top. Now, if our recipe called for 1 cup of flour sifted, then we could take this flour now and put it into our sifter and sift it. If, however, it called for 1 cup of sifted flour, we would sift the flour first, then spoon it into the measuring cup and level it off. Very important step. Now, maybe your recipe doesn't call for a whole cup or even a half a cup. Maybe it just calls for a tablespoon of flour. And measuring a tablespoon or a teaspoon of flour is going to be done exactly the same way. We're going to simply spoon it into our measuring spoon and level off the top. No tapping, no packing. Just spoon it in, level off the top.